As I go along, I'm going to keep going on Twitter and I'm going to keep having run ins with people and I'm going to keep having these little bonus episodes talking about my experiences when I deal with people. On Tuesday, before I recorded my Anthony Kennedy and Supreme Court video, a friend of mine in a Discord server posted a link to a tweet that was put out by a former Blizzard developer and a person that I consider to be one of my personal heroes because he put out one of my favorite video games of all time, Diablo 2. For the purposes of this video, and because of the fact that the tweet that I'm going to cite has since been deleted, I just went back and looked for it so I could have some screenshots for it for citation. I am going to leave his name out of this video, but I will be mentioning to him that I recorded it and let him see it. In his tweet, which wound up being a much longer chain of tweets as I started cascading down through the comments section, the developer sat and laid out a series of suggestions of ways that Democrats could win votes like his back in upcoming elections, as they seem to be continually driving more and more people out of their base and more people into the arms of the Democrats. I've mentioned this partially in my series on why we got Trump and a few other videos in the past. So this is not a new phenomenon, and this is something that I have been seeing for quite a while. I read down through this developer's list and I actually pretty much agreed with almost all of them. Having been a former Democrat supporter myself, and a person who is on record on video for saying that a more moderate or a more blue dog Democrat candidate might entice me to go back and vote Democrat again. The aforementioned did go out and admit that he voted for Trump even though he didn't want to, because he couldn't stand the extremism that had come from the left in the wake of the previous administration and didn't want to see that extremism continue to go forward even with a blue dog Democrat candidate in the executive office. And none of this surprises me. I know for a fact that there's a large portion of Donald Trump's base voters who plan on voting for him again in 2020 that are either displaced Democrat voters for one of two reasons. Either they're a blue dog Democrat that can't stand the fact that the socialist wing is in power of the Democrat Party currently, as I mentioned in my Bernie Sanders video, or also, as I mentioned in the same video, they are a group of voters who feel betrayed because they wanted to vote for Bernie and they realize that the Democrat establishment stole the election away from him and his ability to ever run again in favor of putting their candidate, Hillary Clinton, who was wildly unpopular, in his place. From this point forward, I'm going to refer to the unnamed developer as Tyrael, because I'm finding it harder and harder to not assign a name to the person. So Tyrael, the rest of this one is for you. As I mentioned before, Tyrael went through and made a several tweets long list of suggestions of things that Democrats could do. And all of the tweets and all of his personal replies to the tweets had gathered hundreds of comments, several retweets, and some likes as well by the time I got to looking at the thread myself. And in addition to that, as you scroll through and you started to see some of the top comments that initially went for the original tweet, there were hundreds upon hundreds of those as well. I think Tyrael mentioned in a later tweet the next day that he had over 250,000 notifications just based on that one tweet, with mixed reviews of good, but unfortunately mostly bad, and a large fraction of them absolutely hostile towards him. And that's what I want to come out and talk about, because I started reading through this tweet thread as well, and I ran into several hostile and toxic tweets, and really just tweets that are going to show why the Democrats are going to lose in 2018 and 2020 if they continue to follow down the path that they follow down. I wanted to put the most memorable comment in this thread up on the screen, and I'm saddened by the fact that Tyrael went through and deleted his tweet, because that's what really got me thinking about this video, and that's what made me decide to make this video. And in fact, because of this topic, I actually almost dumped my Supreme Court video entirely, because I was so animated and agitated by the way that the left wants to move the line and take themselves down a more extremist path. One of the most common themes that went along the thread of comments that went towards Tyrael was the fact that the majority of the people on the left, and I don't actually know if they're in the majority or the minority, but according to the tweets, the majority of the people on the left don't want his vote back. And they don't want my vote back either, and they don't want the vote of anybody else who decided to take the chance on Donald Trump. They don't want any of those votes back. And this is a dangerous idea. And this is actually something that I kind of started to see shape up when we were going into the election as well. This is actually something that I should have talked about when I talked about Kanye West a few weeks ago, because it falls along the same theme. And that theme is this. According to the powerhouses that are in the left, as soon as you come off the Democrat plantation, you are tainted and they don't want you back. There is a certain exclusivity that goes along with the faction of left that's in the power right now. And it's a dangerous faction, but I do believe it's going to lead to a breakdown of the Democrat Party, and it's going to lead them to sit back and look at themselves again and either disband their party or reform it to a point where they come back towards the middle and towards the moderate section. But I'd like to take some time and expand on this just a little bit and talk about some of the specifics that I saw, because a lot of it was numbers and there was some strategy in it, even though I don't believe the strategy is going to work. The first thing that I noticed when I was reading through the comments was sort of a sense of how dare you, how absolutely dare you, in the rhetoric that the people were using. I don't believe for a second that political pundits like Sean Hannity want the Democrats to ever come back into power, but even people like that are going out and suggesting ways on their radio and TV shows for the Democrats to become more moderate and become more competitive in upcoming elections. But it seems that the energized base, especially energized with the fact that Donald Trump is going to have another Supreme Court pick, means that they don't feel like they need the people that have fallen away from them. It's almost like a religious cult at this point. It's like when you stop believing and you fall away from the cult, they don't want you back, they don't want you welcome back, they want you to feel like you're an outsider. Indeed, they want you to feel shame for the fact that you fell away from the cult and the religion. And at this point, it's becoming a religion of the worship of state. One of the most common things that I saw when I was reading through this, and even when I replied back, was, you voted for Trump, you made your bed, and now you have to sleep in it. Don't even dare think that you can come back and join us again. What kind of surprised me a little bit, even though I know that they would have come to it eventually, is that while I was reading this, I saw a left-wing voter, not a politician, but a left-wing voter, come out and use numbers in order to make his argument. His argument was flawed. He believed that this would all fall into his favor, but he actually had some numbers out there, and I double-checked the numbers, and they were accurate. According to polling data, there were about 6 million people who voted for Trump that would consider otherwise going back and voting for a Democrat if there was a more moderate. It's about 6 million people that feel that the party has become too extreme at this point in life. And it was that number that that particular commenter cited. He said, we don't want those 6 million people. Those 6 million people screwed us in the country and the way that we are going forward. It's their fault that we don't have our Democrat president, and we have instead our literally Hitler president who is going to put us all into chains and stockades and the gulag. Instead, we want to take some time and focus on the 108 million people in the country that didn't vote. Now, unfortunately, out there, there's no evidence to show that all 108 million of those people, or even any of them for that matter, would go out and vote for an upcoming extreme left-wing socialist executive, or Congress people that would share that idea for that matter. But unfortunately, the assumption among the left and among the extremists is that all they need to do is ignore the other people and say that they're not welcome here and go and start begging these other 108 million people for votes. And of course, all of them considered the position that this one particular person on Twitter held to be the dominant position, if not the totalitarian position, of all 66 million Democrat voters in the previous presidential election. Now, I'm not going to sit here and talk about dead voters or multiple voters or any other thing like that. These are topics that have been beaten to death on the news, on the punditry, on the alt media, on the mainstream media. These are just topics that are beat to death. But I'm going to accept this 66 million person number as a potential fact at this point. And one of the things that I'm going to come out and say is the fact that it's a statistical impossibility that your exact view is held by all 66 million of those people. You come right out and say that there are 6 million people out there that would have voted for a more moderate candidate in the Democrat Party, or at least one more trustworthy. I'd be willing to bet that of those 66 million, at least 6 million of yours, maybe more because your number is slightly higher, depending on whichever factors you want to factor into that, who feel the same way about the opposite direction. There was a large amount of the voting population and even a pretty good sized amount of the non-voting population in this past presidential election that said that the presidency and the decision to pick a president came down to the lesser of two evils. Statistically, you would have almost the exact same number on the left that said they just didn't want to vote for Donald Trump and that Hillary was the lesser of two evils. Of course, no mainstream poll or news source is going to show that because that doesn't fit their narrative. They just want to paint the people that voted for Trump as evil or confused or otherwise hateful of the country. But my final position on this entire thing is that while I will sit here and try and pick apart the argument and show its flaws, I fully support this argument. One of the reasons that I knew that Tyriel had gone through and deleted his tweet was the fact that I went back and looked for the replies that I made to the particular commenter that was so hateful of anybody who would ever consider voting for Trump that he doesn't want any of them to ever look at a Democrat candidate going forward, not even in a primary and not even on a downvote. They're not even allowed to get their pens anywhere near the D line when they're going down the ticket, according to this particular commenter. And I fully support this decision. In fact, I offered to retweet his position. I offered to retweet it as many times as it needed. I even offered to go out and make some more accounts to retweet it more. I wanted his position out there, and I wanted the world to know how I felt. I wanted the world to know that people like him think that it's not okay for you to ever consider having your own opinion or making your own decision. I want that exclusivity largely known and shown out in the world. I even offered to take some of my own funding and buy him a series of bullhorns so that when one dies he can go and pick up the next one and continue to scream his platform of exclusivity and hate for anybody who would even consider having his own ideas. Even though Tyriel deleted his tweet and all of the comments that went beyond it, I feel confident that I am giving this commenter justice and honoring my word by making this video. I want to make sure that it gets out there. I want him to let the world know that it's not okay to think for yourself. That if you ever consider straying from the Democrat plantation, you will be shunned and you will not be allowed back in. And so, anonymous commenter to Tyriel's post, this video is especially for you, and it's for Tyriel as well, but especially it's for you and everybody else in the 66 million that hold the same view as you. I raise my glass to you, and I hope that you get your message out there, and I'm here doing my part to make sure that everybody knows the way that you feel about anybody who has betrayed you otherwise. This one's for you, my friend. And for everybody else who's no longer welcome over on that side, I invite you to come over and listen to alt media, or maybe a conservative podcast or a conservative radio show, and maybe go listen to a conservative speaker when he comes in your area. Listen to our ideas. We welcome you with open arms. We may have differences of opinions, but we'd like to sit down and discuss them with you. Maybe see if we can come up with a compromise somewhere. Maybe see if we can work together some way and make this work so it's fair for everybody. And maybe concede a little bit to your side so we can help make your life better and you can help make our lives better. We've got a place for you over here whenever you're ready to come and talk. Did you swing vote? Have you ever experienced hostility for considering to swing vote? Have you ever been pushed into voting in a specific way because you've been told that you wouldn't be welcome if you didn't vote in that way? I always welcome a positive and thoughtful discussion in the comment section below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at EdsBlog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this show and support this channel. And remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Take care, everyone.